Thracia has many generals in its service, but Lord Hannibal is the most revered of them all. The man has devoted nigh his entire life to the battlefield, so he never found a wife. Man, 12 years ago or so, he did take in an orphan. He treats the boy as though he's his own flesh and blood. What a wonderful guy. One thing that I think is actually really cool about both Judge Kroll games and their story that is it's unfortunately very rare in media. There's an emphasis on the importance of, not only importance, but the validity of adopted families. Hannibal's son is adopted, whether it's Charlot or Corporal, and, you know, obviously part of that is the mechanical necessity of him having to be the child of one of the Gen 1 units, if he was Corporal. But I think that, you know, the cutscene makes a point of Trevant being like, you know, oh, he's not even your own son, like, you know, why do you care about him so much? But Hannibal does, and Hannibal is, you know, portrayed as in the right there. Trevant himself has, you know, the adopted daughter in Altena, who, you know, Trevant has sort of the mixed track record when it comes to, but the game ultimately sort of leans towards, he does care, kind of, even if, you know, the initial reason that he adopted her was callousness, and to have her as a weapon, like, he treats her as if she's his own daughter. In Fire Emblem 5, Leaf is, you know, up to your interpretation whether Nana is Leaf's biological daughter or his adopted one in FE5, because it's left intentionally vague, I think, to allow for pairing possibilities in FE4, like to tie it in that way. But Leaf is functionally also Finn's adopted son. Finn is, because Quan and Ethlin are dead, Finn sort of functions as the dad. Altena's brother treats her like a sister. Yeah, that too. Despite what some very gross people will say online about how, like, actually he's in love with her romantically, no, I think that, you know, he treats her like she's his sister because she is. You know, he grew up with her as his sister. Finn is, you know, again, like I say, he could be Nana's adopted dad, but he's definitely Leaf's adopted dad. And then Avel is Marita's adopted mom explicitly, and that relationship is like, you know, we're gonna be playing Thracia after this, so I don't want to go too into spoilers, but that specific relationship between Marita and Avel is a major plot beat at multiple points in the story. And it's a huge deal, and never once, even honestly, aside from Trevant sort of like gloating towards Hannibal, which is, I think, more meant to show his hypocrisy with like him scoffing at Hannibal while at the same time he pretends he doesn't care about Altena, but he, you know, clearly does. We're not really given even any sort of rejection of like the validity of these adopted families. I just think that's really nice because so often media treats, like, in a game focused around the importance of bloodlines, you would think it would be so easy for the whole, like, real parents thing to come up, and it doesn't. And I just think that's very cool. There's also Oifi and Selef. Oh yeah, Oifi and Selef is another one. Where, and then Oifi and Sigurd. Like, it kind of, it's kind of a reflection where Sigurd, I believe, is Sigurd Oifi's, like, uncle or distant cousin or something? But he sort of functions as an adoptive father figure / knight squire. Like, their relationship is more complex, but I would say that there is, I mean, literally, he's the one who he trusts with his son, right? There's some love there. And then in inverse, Shanam and Oifi raise Selef. I think Oifi has minor blood, right? Whereas that's Era's. Yeah, he has minor Baldur blood, so Oifi is in some way, shape, or form related to Seliph, but Shannon is not, and Shannon is sort of like, you know, there's a reason people ship the two of them together as like, you know, oh, Seliph's two gay dads, is he is sort of every bit as much a father figure to Seliph as Oifi is, I would argue. They have to be related because they have Baldur blood, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with, like, Holland and Ira, where it depends on, like, how far in the past generations they are, right, necessarily? I don't think Oifi's blood relation with Sigurd is ever specified. Yeah, it's just, I guess, you know, Dark Souls-style environmental storytelling, or whatever you want to call it, where the blood you can see on the blood screen, right? And so, you know, like, there has to be some sort of relationship. But honestly, I also don't think the specifics are necessarily important. But yeah, just very cool. An area where traditional media often really fails and sort of it falls into a whole fucking, you know, throwing away your adoptive family for your quote-unquote real one thing. And FE4 is just kind of a resounding success in not being that. I need to read the item descriptions so that I can know what the Judgirl family dynamics are. You gotta wait for VaatiVidya's next lore drop so that you can understand whether it's ethically okay to pair Ira and dipshit Luna Boy. The fuck is his name? Shaluan Holland. What would Sigurd think of Julia? Yeah, I don't know. We don't really get any, and we don't really have any, like, even hints towards that. I imagine it would be, you know, kind of awkward and complicated because while it's, you know, it's Deirdre's son, or it's Deirdre's daughter, it's also, like, you know, Arvis's, right? The broken staff has broken text. Yeah, I've made my thoughts on, like, this translation clear and why I think I personally prefer the old one, and I'll be going back to that. But I do think it is genuinely super impressive, the strides made in FE4, like, hacking and stuff. And I do think the team should be proud of themselves for that, even if, you know, some of these sort of graphical issues or specific choices around exact translation versus translating culturally or whatever don't necessarily fit to my liking. I do think that, you know, the team worked really hard and they accomplished what they wanted to accomplish, and I think they should be proud.